Welcome, Mark. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. So glad to be here.
So first off, I just want to get a little introduction. If you could just give me a background. Um, we have a mutual friend, but I don't really know a whole lot from you. I read a ton about you on Google, but if you could give us like a little recap about your background, that would be amazing.
Awesome. Yeah. So I've been sort of in the film and television world for many, many years. I hosted a wildlife TV series back in the 2000s, and I've lectured with wildlife my whole life. My father was a famous wildlife expert named Jim Fowler. And once you grow up exposed to the natural world and sort of the beauty and the wonders of the natural world, you want to share that with the public. So I started hosting a TV series in the 2000s. That was Emmy nominated. I sort of caught the bug. I was a host, but at the same time, we were also doing the editing and the voiceover and the writing. And it actually, I sort of caught the bug of being a producer, and from that point on, I started producing National Geographic and Discovery TV series, specifically exploration and expedition films, and uh, and then I also have gone back to sort of being a spokesperson for the natural world and educating the public and inspiring the public about the beauty and wonder of the natural world. So right now, I'm the chairman of conservation and the vice president of conservation at the Explorers Club in New York City. We're an international organization of scientists and explorers around the world, and I'm also I'm the director of the Nature Initiative at a foundation called Grace Farms Foundation in New Canaan, Connecticut. So we work locally and globally all over the world, and right now I'm working very hard on we talk about wildlife and we talk about preserving wildlife and protecting wildlife like elephants and rhinos, for instance. But the reality is that our habitat, without habitat, we don't have any life. So what I'm focusing on now is trying to communicate to the public the importance of the natural world, of forests, of biodiversity, of a healthy ecosystem, and that supports not only all life on Earth, but it supports us as humans as well. So that's what I'm working on these days.
So really quick, you touched on your dad. My mom happens to be here visiting. She is from New Mexico, and she lives right outside of Taos, actually.
Nice.
Um, and so when I told her that I was going to be speaking with you today, and I was like, "Yeah, his dad." I was googling him and his dad, and as soon as I started to say anything, she was like, we used to watch his show on Sundays. And so she completely cut me off and educated me. So it was a really nice little overlap for us because normally when I'm like podcasting about something, I'm kind of the one educating her on something I'm doing. So it was kind of fun.
Yeah, so my father hosted. It was called Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom, and he was the host from the 1960 through the 90s. I think it aired in 1963, but and went on until in reruns up through the 90s. So there was major adventures we had. It was the most popular adventure series and sort of wildlife series ever created. So it was, yeah, your mom's talking about every Sunday it was on before Disney, I believe.
Yes.
So there was a cult following. I mean, there's a real cult following. It was just sort of the first time you could get outdoors as a viewer in the United States and go around the world. So he was sort of like the croc hunter of the 60s, 70s, and 80s. That's the way I would put it. But really, it's about trying to share with the public the beauty and awe of the natural world. And I think my father did that. And then for me, growing up on the set of Wild Kingdom, we went all over the world. We traveled all over the world. We went to Africa, to Australia. We went all around Latin America. And, once you see those beautiful cultures and you see the beautiful life, you really have to share it.
And two, I think being so young, that those are kind of the things that shape you. I feel like a lot of the things that I've kind of come full circle with were things that I was exposed to as a young child, and you just don't even realize until later. You're like, wow, I was 7 or 8 or 9 when I was doing those things, and those are the things that I like embedded in work these days. So it's kind of fun to see it
Yes.
come full circle like that.
Yeah, totally. You have no idea how much once you've experienced something, you sort of and it's a major part of your upbringing. You need to share that. And so I'm a falconer. I grew up with all these different falconers, flying birds of prey. I remember growing up in a remote little forested area in New Canaan, Connecticut. I'll tell you something. I had a hawk that would follow me through the trees and in seventh grade or eighth grade. So, I was lucky enough to grow up around eagles, hawks, falcons, and that just sort of made me passionate about all life.
Exactly. It was at that age where it just stuck with you and you just kind of
Yeah.
dwelled on it. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I also saw recently on your Instagram, so again, I was deep dive rabbit hole into all of your
Oh,
Instagram stuff. So I saw that you were recently you were at your family, you have a family property in Georgia, is that right?
yes.
And you posted a picture of a home and you said that it's been in your family 100 years.
Yeah. Yeah, we're very proud of that. We have a family farm. My grandfather was a soil scientist, and he moved down there in 1918. He drove a car 18 days to South Georgia from college, and said, this is good soil, this is good land, and he bought 680 acres for $1 an acre back in 1918. So
Wow.
now 123 years later, I mean 103 years later, excuse me, um, it's in the family, and it's very rare for family farms and family farms to pass down and not be divided up. So it gives you a sense of place,
Oh my
and
gosh.
yeah, but what's really cool is we also have wildlife there. We have it's sort of like we have what we call Little Africa. My father, there were zoos and circuses that would go out of business, and they would call my dad and say, "Jim, we have all these animals. Can you take them for us?" So my dad built this large free roaming wildlife area, a couple hundred acres of just free roaming where the animals are free and the people are in the safari vehicles. And so we have, over the years we've had, people say
Yes,
to
what
me,
kind of animals do you have?
yeah, so right now we have zebras and ostrich and eland.
Oh my
And,
goodness.
but I'll tell you something, over the years, it's crazy. When I was a kid, we had a hyena, we had a cheetah, we had a mountain lion, a bear, we had, the hyena was amazing. And I actually, people say to me, what, did you grow up in a pack of wolves? And I say, well, we did have a pack of wolves on the
Right.
farm in Georgia. So, and I was born down there.
Wow.
So I was born down there. My sister was born there. My father was born there. So, we have a 100-year-old history there and a lot of family members. And it's that same thing about the formative years. Even though I grew up in New York and Connecticut, my my roots are, I have Southern roots, and I love that.
No, that's crazy. 100 years, because I mean, I just think about just even now, your parents passing down like their home or grandparents passing down their home. That's not really a thing now these
Yeah,
days.
that's
So for
right.
it to be in, like you said, not broken up and in your family 100 years, I saw the photo. I showed my mom. I was like, wow, 100 years. She's like, that's crazy. The safari
Yeah.
part, like having the animals, that's amazing. So you have to have obviously someone come and kind of maintain like that side of it, obviously.
Yeah, so my cousin is a biologist. She was sort of inspired by my father as well. Two of my cousins, one's a veterinarian and one's a biologist. So together they're running the farm, and I just got back from Thanksgiving down there, and it was
I
as
was gonna
beautiful
say
as
that's
ever.
like a gold egg of a little family to care for the
Yeah.
that is
It's very, and we have Toyota Land Cruiser Jeeps, which, those are very rare. So the Toyota Land Cruiser FJ40s we have down there.
no, I
That you
saw
walk-
I'm a Toyota geek, so that really just
Oh,
struck a
nice.
nerve with me. So my first car was it was like a 1990 4Runner. It was like an old school
That's what
4Runner.
I had. I had an '88 4Runner and then a '95 4Runner,
Oh
and
my gosh,
the
see? And
best cars ever
so my
made.
brother had, I'm trying to think what year, it was the last year they did like the hard top that you could take
Yeah, the
off.
removable top. That was
Yes.
'89. Yeah,
Okay,
I
so
had the '88.
he had one of those, which
That's
we
awesome.
loved. We loved taking the top off. That was like the best years.
Yeah, I had that thing for 20 plus years. But what we're talking about is like a love for adventure, you know? And that's what that car represents. That's what, for me, it's like the open road and freedom to go off road and explore. And I think the key to everything we're talking about is sort of a spirit of exploration, a spirit of adventure. And if we can key into that, we can get people interested in, and that's what Wild Kingdom was about. That's what the series I hosted called Life in the Wild was about. And actually, right now, I'm hosting a TV series called Road Trip Close to Home, and it's on in the tri-state area, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, and it's all about just inspiring people to get outdoors, to to realize that within 2 hour drive of wherever you live, there's some unique place where there's an adventure that awaits that you'll never forget. So I've been hosting that since COVID started. I've been hosting Road Trip Close to Home because I wanted to inspire people to get out there and explore.
It is a lot of and I say this because we just took a so my husband is a born and raised Brooklyn only child, and I'm
Cool.
from Portland, Oregon.
Hmm.
So we literally couldn't be further from each other in culture growing up.
Yeah.
So it's really funny to kind of see how we overlap. So I was telling him, as a kid that my parents had an old school RV and we would go on trips, and he's just like, okay, like camping. So I've taken him camping, and the first time we were camping, he would say things like this is what homeless people do. Like I feel like we're just out here, but I have a home. He's like, so I like the concept part. So when we got there, it's different, right? You have activities and you're doing things all day. You're not just like sitting next to this tent. I think
Oh,
like he thought in his mind. I don't know. Uh
that's hilarious.
it was hilarious because I'm like, no, home, oh my gosh, what
That's
are
the
you
whole point,
talking
isn't it?
about? No, like it really baffled me. So I took him, I'm trying to think that first time we were at a really nice little campground, Eagle Crest, I think, on the
Cool.
Delaware Water Gap. We
Now you're
basically,
talking.
yeah, we didn't have service. We had our daughter, so we went
Great.
tent status. It was hilarious. So in the middle of the night, we had a visitor. We have our dog with us, and out of all the dogs I've ever owned, she's probably the most city dog.
Okay.
She's a little Boston Terrier. She's actually going to be 11 in a few days.
Nice.
But we had went camping, and um, he I wake up to my husband this far from my face. He's got like his flashlight on his phone, and my mom's with us. We have our daughter and the dog, and he's like, something's outside. And I'm like, okay, um, where's my mom? I'm like, middle of the night. I don't really know what's
Yeah.
happening, right? And and for me, I was still like calm because I'm like camping. Okay,
Mhm.
like, are you gonna run outside? No, you're gonna wait right here. You're gonna just gonna hang out
Right.
for a minute.
Right.
So sure enough, the next day, we go outside. We're all like using the restroom, and he sees like our neighbor people getting up, and he runs over there. And I'm like, oh, sure enough, he's gonna tell him about God knows what came
Yeah.
out of the trees last night. And the guy
Yeah.
had to correct him immediately. He's like, oh, it was skunks. They were in the garbage. So
Okay.
he could swear that he heard like breathing and that this big animal was out there. And what it was is, on the tent you have like the tarp outside to lay some of your shoes and things out. You could definitely hear something, kind of walking
Yeah.
around on the tarp, and he thought that this creature was just humongous.
Well, it's interesting because if your husband grew up in Brooklyn, you said
Yeah.
in Brooklyn, yeah, Brooklyn's the concrete jungle. The risks in Brooklyn and in the city are vastly different than in the natural world. And what's fascinating is that we as sort of we've evolved with this fear of being bitten, scratched, or mauled by predators, right? So we have this innate fear that some predator might bite us in some way. What's interesting is that in the natural world, if you look at the numbers, the a car getting in a car is 37,000 times more dangerous. And I'm not kidding you. It is actually the numbers. I've done the numbers. It's 37,000 times more dangerous to get in a car than it ever is to be in the outdoors. So, I mean, wild animals nationwide in a big year may, injure or kill 3 people. Cars kill 37,000. So the reason I bring that up is we have this innate fear, but it has nothing to do with the real risks in our lives,
Right.
right? So but let me also throw out that wonder, that now you've got this great story, and your husband does too. The fear and awe. So fear and awe are very closely related, and wonder, right? Awe usually starts with fear and ends with wonder, right? So that feeling of wondering, oh my God, what is out there? What animal is digging through something? I'm terrified. It actually heightens all your senses. It makes you feel more connected to the natural world and to our evolution than you've ever felt. And that's what I love. If you look a bear in the eyes, or you look a big cat in the eyes, or you look a wolf, for instance, thousands of years of evolution and instinct sort of flood back, and you both understand each other. And that's the most beautiful thing about the natural world. And by the way, camping, a good example about camping is camping's one of the few things left in our society that's not based on your income and what
Mm.
segment of society you're from, right? So you can make a very modest income, or you can be wealthy. If you can get out there to the Delaware Water Gap, set up a tent, barbecue near a river, in our protected areas. I mean, talk about quality of life. I mean, that's true quality of life. And for me, that's what I think can unify people with the natural world.
We made such a connection. It made me realize what probably a disconnection there is here in this tri-state area. So I
Right.
grew up in Portland, and then I lived in Huntington Beach, California for a handful of years also before I
Yeah.
relocated. And um, so my point to that story was we actually so I rented an RV, a bigger RV, probably like a medium size. I think it was 30 feet.
Cool.
And we drove. So I'm trying to think. We left at the end of August, and we came back a day or two before school started. And we
Cool.
drove to Taos. We made a nice
Nice.
trip from here to New York City, so it was great. We drove 14 states. We purposely took a different route back, and I
I
think
love that.
a
I love
lot
that
of
area.
the oh my gosh, every state we have like a crazy awesome memory from like every state. Like Kentucky, I was like, why is everything burning? Why does it smell like
Mm.
so then my one of my aunts chimed in. I was like writing stuff, and one of my aunts chimed in about how they stayed in Kentucky, and someone told her about what that was about. So it's just so fun to kind of see. So our daughter is she just turned to 8 right after our trip, and then we have a son who's about to be 3. So we had the 2 kids, the dog.
Oh my God, that's great. But I mean, if you think about the beauty of how your kids are growing up, that's what it's really about. I mean, look, some of my best memories are going out in our beat up old RV.
Me
when
too.
I was a kid and traveling around the country. I remember we went up to Maine and Canada, and we went down to the southeast all the time, and those are some of the best adventures you can have, and their family. I mean, I remember driving down right around this time of year. Every year, my dad would get the camper going, and he would say, "All right, we're going to Georgia." And I remember one year we put Christmas lights on the outside of the camper, and we grabbed some like limb of a pine tree that was left in the Walmart parking lot or something, put it inside, dressed it up, and kept driving, and got there on Christmas Day. And I mean, what it
That's
really does is
awesome.
it sort of adds to, life is an adventure, and a diversity of experience. That's what a kid, I think, really makes a kid strong, is diversity of culture. I mean, like, look at Taos. The Native American culture in Taos is unbelievable. It's so fascinating, and Santa Fe and that whole region. There's so much to explore in the United States, and I think a lot of people, we take for granted where we are and what's around us. And so what I've been working on with this whole sort of road trip close to home series is just that same thing. Is, look, there are amazing places within a 2 hour drive that you and your family will never forget. And I think that is what life's really about, as far as I'm concerned. And by the way, kids are growing up with just iPhones and, you know, iPads, where they're like, you've seen them, it's like you can wave your hand in between and they don't even blink. So I think, for parents and for all of us, with our nieces and nephews or parents, it's so important to get outdoors and see the real thing. And I mean, we're going into this metaverse right now, right? This idea of the metaverse. That is the worst direction we can go, which is completely disconnected from anything real. You know, The natural world is one of the few things that is not created by humans, right? That is doesn't I mean that exists and is not based on our salaries, but it's also the one. It's the first time a child feels awe and wonder is most always in nature. So I challenge you as a parent to get out to really work hard to get the children out there and look up at the stars, even if you're in Brooklyn, or go find wildlife and adventures right around the city. You're right to do that. And I mean the Delaware Water Gap is one of those places. I actually want to get down there and explore a little, over the holidays. So I'm with you on that.
No, the it was I was actually very shocked how clear the water was. We could see the bottom. So we went down, we rafted down. Eagle Crest Campground has a shuttle service, so they can drop you off in a kayak or a floaty mechanism of some sort, and you float. I think it's 3 miles downriver, and you get out
Nice.
right at the campground. So we did that, and it was just so clear. It was really crazy. Um,
Good.
One of the other
Good.
things that I wanted to ask you though about your show was do you have upcoming episodes that are coming out or that just came out?
Sure. So I've done about 20 episodes since I started hiking the Appalachian Trail on the first day of the COVID closure. I, I, I innately knew that this idea of stay inside, stay indoors, be safe was totally insane with a virus that was airborne. So I decided, all right, I'm going to get out there. I'm going to hike the Appalachian Trail, and every day I would hike further and further. And so when I finished that, I started hosting this series based on the experience of that first expedition. And I've done about 20 of them all over the state of Connecticut. So I've been focusing on the state of Connecticut, which, by the way, until COVID hit, I always identified with New York City. Right, I'm in
Right.
Southern Connecticut. We love the Rangers. We love the Giants. It's like we've always been considered part of New York Metro. But once COVID hit, I realized, wait a second, our state is huge. I mean, it's small, but it's got huge
So much
diversity and
things. Yes.
huge adventures around it. It's got mountains and lakes and rivers and coastline and all and history and culture. And so I started exploring, and it's been amazing. So I just did a episode yesterday, no, on Monday, which is about which I'm psyched about. It's the first day of the new year hike. So the idea is to start the new year off right by getting outdoors in your local land trust or local state park and connecting with nature on the first day of the year, and starting it off. Being out in the natural world is good for your mental state. It's amazing how good it is for depression, for anxiety, for all of these things. Just being outdoors. So the first episode is takes place in an area called Litchfield County, Connecticut, and it's in this beautiful beside a river. So we just shot it on Monday, and there's this incredible river and old growth forest, and you know beautiful white quartz all over the ground, and it was actually an amazing time. So
That's
so
awesome. So
yeah,
that comes out the first of the year it'll come out?
that'll be November. That'll be December 30th.
Okay.
Inspiring people to get out on the first. So that's on News 12 in the tri-state area.
Okay, perfect.
So tune in and enjoy. Yeah.
Yes, and what I'll do is I'll get all that information from you, and we'll also post it with the
Cool.
podcast too, so if anyone wants to click on it, they are able.
And by the way, just so because I know you focus on careers and how to get into the careers, this show is produced by I'm on camera, and we have one writer, director, producer, editor, right? Just one person, and it's
I wanted to
amazing.
pick your brain a little bit about that. So, uh
And these are 2 to 3 minute segments.
no, I want to pick your brain a little bit about that part. So you had said that before that you kind of were like a one man, and then you said you have a writer also for the show part. But even when you started in COVID and you went back, I'm assuming you probably did all of that yourself for those,
So
right?
I did all the photography and I documented my expedition during COVID up the Appalachian Trail. But then when I was interviewed by this woman, she's amazing. Her name is Lori Golias, and she's a news producer, but she's super talented, and so she shoots it, directs it, edits it, and then I mean it's amazing.
That
And
is
so
amazing.
yeah, and,
And I
and then
say
she
that as
edits.
someone that is like doing all of those, trying to take on all those tasks also during COVID. So that is like an all star, honestly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so in this case, it's sponsored. It's a sponsored segment of like 2 to 3 minute. And it's Hyundai is so because it's called Road Trip Close to Home. Hyundai, the car company, is the sponsor of the series, and so I think in each state there's one producer that focuses on the road trip close to home, and then they have a tri-state version that airs every Thursday as well. That
Mm.
is all three, and it's got somewhere like 9 million viewers. So
What is your go-to for planning a trip? Let's say that someone did want to try and get out with their family and they didn't really know where to start. What's a good place to kind of just look up and say, where can I hike with children or eat and not,
yeah,
where's the bathroom? Like those kinds of things. Like how would they, and I say that as when
yeah,
I planned the RV trip, my husband was like, I have no idea how he thought we were going to sleep at rest stops, which I was like crying laughing. He's like, I don't know how
that's
you
great.
found these places. So we were staying at like
Yeah,
Campgrounds of America. I basically
yeah,
all around the way found we'd drive average like 4 hours a day, 5 hours with the kids, and we'd get somewhere
cool.
and hang out for the day.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's a
Well,
lot of the problem is the logistical part.
yeah, I mean, I'll tell you what I use most of all when if I'm using apps. If you want to camp out places, use Hip Camp. You know, Hip Camp is a cool app that will tell you all the places along the way where you can camp for a few bucks. You know, $40 or here or there. So I definitely recommend Hip Camp. I definitely use All Trails all the time. So if I'm anywhere, I can pull up All Trails, put in the zip code, or hit the location button, and it'll tell me what's around me all around, within a radius. So I think that's another great way. And then, I mean, truthfully, even TripAdvisor, if you're going somewhere, you can use TripAdvisor, say, all right, top 10 things to do in this area. I mean, it'll give you leads, or top 10 hikes in this area, or, it'll give you leads. And then you could now, and what, I'll tell you, one of my favorite is Atlas Obscura. Atlas Obscura is this crazy cool, it's like the unknown side of a city, right? The unknown, sort of interesting, mysterious, abandoned, all these cool. So anywhere you can put in Atlas Obscura and put in a location, and it'll tell you some crazy cool place that nobody knows about, or that you can go visit. So Atlas Obscura is something I definitely recommend if you want to get into abandoned and mysterious and all those things. I mean, for kids, that might be too much, but for people that are just adventurous and explorers and want to do something different, that I recommend Atlas Obscura as a great example of sort of the unknown side of a
No, I'm
place.
gonna look that up. That's interesting. I'm here in Staten Island, and I mean,
Cool.
there's just so much stuff. I mean, Staten Island is its own crazy little world. Anyhow, you are listed on the Grace Farms website.
Yeah. So you want me to tell you a little about Grace
Yes,
Farms?
yes.
Yeah, well, come out to Grace Farms anytime. We are a we're a we're a cultural and community center. We're an 80-acre preserve with an ultra modern, sort of very high profile headquarters. That's this Japanese architecture that flows down the mountainside. It's insanely beautiful. We're only an hour or something outside of New York, so you can come as the public just to get outdoors,
Mm.
go for a hike, and take and do some of the programming. I design something like 35 weeks of experiential programming to connect kids and families to nature. Um, but then also what we do is we do international work. So I just got back from Africa. And so the idea is land preservation, forest preservation, dealing with climate. And, the best people get so concerned about climate, and we talk all the time about green tech. But you know what the best green tech on earth is to absorb CO2? It's not something we're trying to develop. It's called trees, right? It's called trees. Trees do all the heavy lifting on the planet of absorbing CO2. So what I'm working on is we need to preserve the forests that already exist, because in those forests is all the biodiversity. In those forests is all the habitat for wildlife. So I'm overseas. I just got back from Africa, from Tanzania, an amazing country, which is filled with wildlife, like every kind of wildlife you could ever dream of. But also, there's work now to actually value standing forests for all of the carbon they absorb, right? So, every tree absorbs 50 pounds of carbon per year. Every tree. An acre of mature forest absorbs 30,000 pounds of carbon. Now take that to these huge, I mean, the Northeast, for instance, New England is one of the largest deciduous forests in the country. Just the forests in New England absorb all the tailpipe emissions that we create. They absorb half of all the energy we produce from other sources. So it's amazing what trees can do. So what I'm always pushing is, how about we work on what's called nature-based solutions? If we care about nature and we help to give Mother Nature a chance, it's amazing how resilient she is.
What do you,
And that's what Grace Farm stands for. And we have nature, arts, justice, we have community programming, we have all of that. So people are welcome to come to Grace Farms. It's in New Canaan, Connecticut.
that's
So
what I was going to ask you. So that's open to the public.
yeah, it's free to the public. You can also join as a member and get some member benefits, but it's free to the public. You just come up any Tuesday through Sunday. We're open. Walk the grounds, get a bite.
Yeah,
We've
so
got one of the
just a little bit
we got the
about
best chef
their
in town.
yeah, so the build out, like you said, is so high end, it's gorgeous. But just to list a few things, they have a indoor amphitheater, they have basketball courts, they have
Yeah,
an art center that it looks like you can probably perform art or ballet and dance there. There's a library. I noticed that in the library it had a focus on educating people on human trafficking, which I thought was crazy and amazing because I don't know anything about that. This is a new thing that I've been reading about only like honestly since COVID that I kind of took a nosedive in and read a little bit like every night that I just didn't even know this world existed, right?
yeah,
So to someone that's younger, that's in their 20s, how would
yeah,
you educate someone about where to even begin to know what to look for in something like human trafficking
yeah,
for young people? Because I feel like it is not something talked about, and then it's such a big deal.
yeah. No, human trafficking is a real problem. My partner Rod Katabi, who I work with on the wildlife trafficking, he is an expert in human trafficking, and so essentially, sometimes you'll run into somebody and they seem scared, or they're on a ranch, or they're in a, and you're like, wait, they seem like they're scared and they're trying to tell me something, but I can't tell what it is. Sort of have to listen to your instincts. Oftentimes, people will be trafficked for sex trafficking. So a lot of in the prostitution world, that's very common. Um, what we've specialized in at Grace Farms is, my colleague Rod Katabi, he specializes in how do you expose and stop human trafficking, but not re-victimize the women and children that are being trafficked. You got to make sure that you protect them as well as take down the bad guys. It is an organized crime issue. So here's the deal: human trafficking of anything, of illicit goods. Okay, human, guns, drugs, wildlife. Those are the four largest crimes in the world, organized crimes in the world. People don't know that. So the organized crime, they don't care if it's a human being trafficked, guns, drugs, or wildlife. Whatever's in that container that pays them, they can traffic, right? Humans are the hardest to imagine, and it's the most sort of heartbreaking. But they're doing some really important work now that people are bringing light to it. There's a lot of work being done, and I think we're making progress on it. But you got to sort of learn about the key factors and sort of some of the signs, the telltale signs to keep an eye out for. Um, a lot of times it's indentured servitude. It's like they'll bring people into the country with a promise of a job or something, then take away their passport, then tell them they have to work, as it, like almost like not slave labor, but similar forced labor in a house, or they're on a ranch, or so there's it's vulnerable populations that are being preyed upon. I'll give you one major example of this is the Native American reservations. This is something we all need to be aware of, because we talk about every other kind of person and class and race and creed in the United States. We don't ever talk about Native American people and their challenges and the way they've been treated in our history. The truth is that reservations, because they're a different national boundary, right? It's a nation. The law enforcement doesn't collaborate. So oftentimes there will be organized criminals of, let's say, for instance, drug traffickers on that land, and Native Americans have something like 10 times a higher rate of domestic violence against women, of women being trafficked, of women going missing. These are major issues that we have to address, so we're working on Native American issues, and trying to expose those type of challenges. But it's all over. It's around us. It happens in the prostitution world all the time. So we have to be aware. We need to know what's going on and educate ourselves.
I have some nieces and nephews that are all ranging in age from baby all the way through high school, and I know that they listen. So I kind of want them just to be aware too with social media. Those things are all a little bizarre, and unknowingly, you can be communicating with someone that you think is, a kid or
That's
your
right.
age, and that's not really the situation.
That's right. And there'll be oftentimes there'll be promises of, come to the country, come for free, we'll set you up, and all this stuff. And a lot of that isn't true. So I know in Latin America, people are taking advantage of and trafficked across the border. And, yeah, I think do some research on the telltale signs. Grace Farms is we specialize in anti-human trafficking and anti-forced labor and sort of slave conditions. All of that stuff still exists. We don't talk about it, but you can reach out to places like Grace Farms. We actually have people at Grace Farms. If someone sees something that they're concerned about, they can reach out to Grace Farms and it's called the Justice Initiative, and they can make a report and we can follow up on it.
Wow,
So
that is amazing. I saw a little
it's
bit
a good
about that on the
resource.
website. Yes, so I wanted to touch on that so we could let the listeners. I'll again post a link
Yeah,
directly to
that's it.
that. I appreciate your time. We're wrapping up on an hour, so I know that you probably have a lot of stuff going on, but thank you again. I
Yes.
will definitely reach out to you with some other questions just about
Cool.
that we didn't get to touch on today. But
Okay, good. Talk to you
thanks,
later.
Mark. Bye.
Wonderful talking to you. Take care. Bye bye.